Dear friends and distinguished members, I take this opportunity to extend a warm and hearty welcome to all of you to this webinar on changing landscape of capital markets in the post-COVID era. We're extremely thankful today to Mr. G. Mahalingam, whole-time member of the Securities and Exchange Board of India, SEBI, for his kind consent to address us today. His varied experience, expertise, and valuable insights would definitely benefit all of us who are attending this session today. In his current role, Mr. Mahalingam is looking after Corporate Finance Department, Foreign Portfolio Investors, Investigations Departments, and the Office of Investor Assistance and Education. He is also at present a member of the Board of Governors of the National Institute of Securities Market, NISM. Prior to this current assignment, he was an executive director in the Reserve Bank of India, looking after the market operations, both rupee liquidity and foreign exchange operations. Friends, the COVID-19 pandemic has slowed down economies, disrupted supply chains, and generally caused a great deal of volatility and uncertainty in global capital markets. The economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic have created a speculation about what is likely to happen, and especially with regard to corporate behavior in the post-pandemic area, and also about investor confidence and their strategies. In these testing times, the role of the capital market regulator, SEBI, has become all the more significant. It has ensured the normal working of capital markets during the entire lockdown period, ensuring continuity of operations. The relaxations provided by SEBI to listed companies have been a welcome move, and in such unprecedented times are necessary to reduce the inordinate amount of logistical and practical burdens. SEBI has come out with a number of relaxations to facilitate fundraising by the corporates during these COVID times. These relaxations are with regards to rights issues, follow-on offers, QIPs, creeping acquisitions, and preferential issues. Many corporates have already availed or are in the process of availing these relaxations to raise funds to meet their requirements. The COVID situation has pushed many companies into stress. These companies are finding it difficult to raise funds from the market. Further, due to the suspension of IBC provisions for 6 months, both the companies and the lenders are unable to utilize the IBC framework for resolution. In this backdrop, SEBI has come out with eligible stress companies. These relaxed norms, finalized after wider public consultation, can be used for restructuring of stressed companies without going through the IBC process. Of course, the guidelines have due safeguards built in to prevent misuse. A series of policy measures such as reducing the trading lot, facilitating further funds raising by preferential issues, including easier placement to institutional investors, rights issue including fast-track rights issues, etc. have also been taken by SEBI. Friends, to conclude, I would say that we are passing through difficult, stressful, and uncertain times. However, the challenges also bring along with them several opportunities. The revival of the stock market and an uptick in fundraising by the corporates is encouraging. The regulator has tried to tread a fine line between taking measures to enable companies to carry on their operations and protecting the interest of investors. One can only wait and watch to find out the long-term impact of this global pandemic and whether the measures introduced by SEBI to mitigate the same have been satisfactory to cushion the impact of COVID on capital markets. Friends, with these words, I would now like to invite Mr. Mahalingam to deliver his address. And after his address, I will request Mr. Subodh Agarwal, the Chairman of our Council on Capital Markets, to moderate the proceedings further. Thank you, Mr. Mahalingam, and we all look forward to hearing you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Am I clearly audible?
Absolutely, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that very effusive introduction, which I don't really deserve. I'm at the outset, let me be very thankful to the Merchant Chamber of Commerce for having invited me to address this webinar. on a very topical issue, the changing landscape in the capital markets. As you very rightly mentioned some time back, I think in COVID times, things have changed a lot right across the world, not just in India, right across the world. Now, I want to focus a little bit on the global macros, how things are panning out across the world. Then I'll come back to India, how things are panning out across India as far as the macros are concerned. Then I come back to the capital markets and lay stress on about 3 or 4 areas in the time that is allotted to me, so that I do justice to what are the layers of changing landscape as far as the capital market is concerned. Clearly, when we look at the global macros, I think things have undergone far-reaching changes in the last about 6 months' time. I think if you look at the IMF projection of the global outlook, they have been continuously downgraded on a month-to-month basis or a quarter-to-quarter basis, with every country seeing a downgrade as far as the GDP growth of the economy is concerned, which means the global growth itself is going to take a huge amount of hit. Now, I think all of you would have seen in the newspapers today that the US economy has shrunk by 33%, 32.9% to be precise. I think people are not expecting this big a percentage, and this percentage itself is a kind of a shocker. But clearly, what has happened is, I think the economies, by having observed the lockdown, it was a question of a dilemma between the health, the lives, and the livelihoods across all the countries in the world. And naturally, I think clearly the governments had to take a safer course. The lives are much more important than the livelihoods initially, but slowly but very steadily and very firmly, we should be transiting towards the livelihood part of it. That's a basic theme which is being driven by very important economies across the world. Now, clearly, again, what is happening in this kind of a situation is, as the global GDP is coming down, as it is trending down, the central bankers are playing a very important role. The central bankers across the world, they are flooding the system with a huge amount of liquidity, with enormous amount of instruments, monetary policy instruments, which are getting used to buy the bonds, to buy any kind of instrument to inject the currency liquidity in the system. The foremost in this, of course, is the US Fed Reserve. You also have the other central banks which are actually flooding the system with a huge amount of liquidity. I would say India is not lagging far behind even in this. Now, the very important consequence of this is that every economy is getting flooded with a huge amount of liquidity, and naturally, as a consequence of this huge amount of liquidity, the yields on any kind of instrument, they are coming down and down and down. Now, this is happening to the Government of India securities also. The Government of India securities were seeing a yield of close to about 8% not too long back, and today the yields are closer or even less than 6%. I think it is primarily due to the low growth of GDP, the fear of low growth of GDP, as well as what is happening as far as the central bank liquidity is concerned. Now, we are affected by 2 factors. One, the amount of liquidity which gets injected into the system by the Reserve Bank of India, which is the central monetary authority for the country. And number 2, the liquidity which percolates into the country by way of foreign central banks opening up their tabs, and a huge amount of capital flow entering the system. Now, this is a very important phenomenon for emerging market economies, particularly like those like India, where capital flows keep gushing in search of yields. Because today, if you compare the yields of the US 10-year with the yields of the Indian 10-year, there's a clear 600 basis points difference, or at least about 500 basis points difference, even on the worst of days. So which means if people bring their dollars and invest in India, they get an extra 500 basis points of return. But then is it something which comes without any cost? No, it doesn't come without any cost at all. There is going to be a huge cost of exchange rate risk that people are going to bear, and that exchange rate risk, if the exchange rate is going to depreciate in India, clearly that is going to cause a huge amount of tumult for a foreign investor. But be that as it may, what we are today focusing on is a huge amount of gushing money coming into India through the foreign route, where the FPIs are bringing in a huge amount of money to invest in the bond markets, to invest in the equity markets in India. This is one story, one side of the story. Now look at the second side of the story, the Indian macros. The Indian macros, again, when you look at the GDP, even before the COVID set in, the GDP was actually going closer and closer towards 4%, from a level which was almost about close to about 7%. And that was because of a variety of factors. One of the most important factors there is that overall, as far as the system is concerned, the banks were turning very much risk averse because of a heavy load of NPAs in the system. Now, this brought about a very important monetary policy reaction in India, with the Reserve Bank of India actually slashing the interest rates down and down and down. And it has reached a record low right now, with the repo rates and the reverse repo rates having entered a territory which perhaps we have not seen for quite some time now. Along with this interest rates, the Reserve Bank has also done the job of flooding the entire system with a huge amount of liquidity, a huge amount of liquidity. Today, if you look at the amount of liquidity that has been put in the system by the Reserve Bank, that will be almost of the order of about 7 to 8 lakh crores, with the occasional liquidity bumps even more than this, and sometimes it comes a little less than this. But clearly, on a day-to-day basis, there is a huge amount of reverse repo with the Reserve Bank of India, which the banks do, which clearly indicates that there is a surplus liquidity floating around in the system, and this surplus liquidity gets parked with the Reserve Bank of India at the end of the day every time. So clearly, number one, interest rates are trending down. Number two, the liquidity is awash in the system, with a huge amount of open market operations from the Reserve Bank of India, with a huge amount of forex purchases by the Reserve Bank of India, and a huge amount of money coming into the system by way of these kinds of operations by the Reserve Bank of India. This is very briefly, very, very briefly about the global scenario and the Indian scenario. I have not gone into very many aspects of the Indian scenario. One can talk about banks, one can talk about the non-performing assets, one can talk about IBC, one can talk about several other sectors which perhaps are in need of funds. One can talk about a little bit of NBFC crisis and all that, but I'm not going to all that. I'm just giving you a flavor of the macro system as the COVID set in, and a huge amount of liquidity is there as far as the system is concerned. Now let's come to the capital markets. When you come to the capital markets, ideally, the capital markets were supported for quite some time by the foreign portfolio investors. Today, the foreign portfolio investors are equally matched by the domestic institutional investors. So this is a very important change as far as the capital market is concerned. Now, I won't really attribute it to post-COVID situation. This situation had started even some time back. And in the post-COVID scenario, this situation has actually accentuated more, with more of domestic institutions coming and piling in a huge amount of funds into the capital markets. So at a point of time when we used to say, just about say 1.5, 2 years back, when we used to say that the stock market used to fluctuate, gyrate with the foreign portfolio flows, whether they are coming in or going out, today, that trend is clearly off. That trend is clearly not on. Today, it's not just the foreign portfolio investors who are playing a big role in the market. There are domestic institutional investors who are also playing a very, very big role in the market. So the domestic mutual funds, the domestic insurance companies, the domestic pension funds, EPFOs, all these are sitting on the sidelines, and they are able to play a very, very important role, and sometimes a counteracting role to the foreign portfolio investors, which has actually brought about a kind of robustness as far as the capital market is concerned. Robustness in terms of flows. Let me give you a slightly different story now. If you look at again the capital market, particularly after the COVID, after the lockdown, the number of retail investors entering the market has taken a quantum jump, has really improved, has increased very sharply. Now, the huge amount of retail investor money coming in, apart from the mutual fund money coming in, the stock markets have seen, again, a directional move more towards the north after particularly March last week. We saw a big crash coming in March last week, with the markets crashing almost from BSE index of almost about 41,000 to about 26,000. Today, the index is back at about 36, 37, 38,000, again, in a very steady way, because of a huge amount of money coming in from all these investors. And this again, if you look at it, juxtapose it with what is happening in the real economy, that's a real surprising factor. The real economy has not really shown that trend of growth, which should actually translate into a positive sentiment for the stock market. The stock market has been moving up, but the real economy has actually been either coming down or stagnating, with the GDP growth actually coming down and down. We will see what will be the latest GDP number when it is going to be put out, and the markets are predicting that the GDP number could be negative or it could be a very low positive number. So this low positive GDP growth and this low corporate growth, how does it actually propel the stock market, has become a big debate now. Now, one is, of course, a huge amount of liquidity which is coming into the market, as I was telling you, because of the capital flows which are entering through the FPI route, and because of a lot of domestic institutional flows which are coming in because of central bank liquidity, and a lot of retail investors coming into the system. I don't know for what reason. I'm not able to attribute any particular reason to that. Maybe I would say, maybe in a lighter vein, maybe during the lockdown time, people thought that let me start trading in the market. I have nothing better to do. So people have moved into the market and started actually experimenting with this market. But net, what has brought about this kind of a impact has translated in the form of the PE ratio, the price earnings ratio, going back to the levels of almost about 26, 27. Clearly, this price earnings ratio is because of two factors. One, the prices of the stocks going up, which is sitting in the numerator, and two, the EPSs of the companies going down because of the earnings coming down, and we are going to see more of earning downgrades, perhaps because of the lockdown, which is a natural consequence. Only when the normal economy resumes, the normal economic activity resumes, maybe the company's earnings will start going up. Till then, obviously, we are going to see a downgrade as far as the corporate profits are concerned, and that's going to have an impact on the EPS, which means the price to earnings ratio is actually showing itself up at a much higher level. The question that one can ask at this level is it good for the retail investors to enter at this stage? I'm not going to pass a value judgment at this stage at all. I have nothing to pass as far as a value judgment is concerned. All that I would say is, when the retail investors are entering here at this stage, I am absolutely hoping that they are taking a very good calculated call, and they are taking a call after taking into account all the risks which are prevalent in the market. Now, the market is not made up of just the cash market. It is also made up of the derivatives market, Now, the derivatives market has options and futures. Now, whether all of us understand these options and futures as retail investors, I'm not sure. But if the retail investors are going to take a calculated call on these options and futures, knowing fully well what is the risk, what is the return, what is a risk-adjusted return in this market, well, it's fine. It's absolutely on. That's not a problem at all. But in the retail investors are entering the derivatives market only on the basis of hearsay, only on the basis of somebody giving them a tip, saying that this particular option is going to be good for buying, this particular future is good for selling. I think that's not a good trend at all. If the retail investors are entering the market today on their own, not on the basis of mutual funds, they should be capable enough to understand what the market trends are, what is causing this market trend, and they should be very clearly be able to evaluate the risk versus return, and they should have a sufficient amount of risk appetite as far as their portfolio is concerned. On the contrary, this is a point that I wanted to stress very much. If people think that the bank deposits are earning them a lesser and lesser rate of return, from a level of fixed deposits earning them almost about 9%, today the fixed deposits are earning them hardly about 5.5 to 6%. And if that is the cause for entering the equity market, I think the retail investor has to reevaluate his strategies. He has to certainly reevaluate his strategies. Clearly, the bank fixed deposit is a different kind of instrument, and the equity market is a different kind of instrument. So one has to carefully evaluate this before getting into this equity market. So this is one point that I wanted to stress on as far as the capital market is concerned, what is happening in the post-COVID times with a lot of retail investors coming in, and what they should do as a kind of a due diligence before actually getting into this market and trading in this market, without getting into the tips which are given by people who are supposed to be knowledgeable. It's not the tip which is going to matter ultimately. It's your money, it's your return. So you got to take a very careful call on this. This is going to be very, very important. The second aspect that I'm going to touch on for the next about 5 minutes is the listed companies. The Bombay Stock Exchange has roughly about 5,000 listed companies. The National Stock Exchange has roughly about 1,900 listed companies which are listed there. And the governance in these listed companies is going to be enormously important in these difficult times. It was just mentioned at the time of introduction that the SEBI has given a lot of relaxations to tide over these difficult times. Yes, that is very much true. SEBI has taken a very calculated call. SEBI has seen how the listed companies are suffering. So obviously, to make the entire activity of fundraising easier through a variety of routes, like the rights issue, or like the preferential offer, or like any other issues that could be done, we are trying to make it easier and easier so that people can overcome, the companies can overcome these difficult times through instruments which are much, much easier to operate. And that's what SEBI has done as far as the fundraising is concerned. So SEBI has also ensured that as far as other compliances timelines are concerned, they are made easier so that the compliance burden during these difficult times are actually lightened to a reasonable extent without actually eroding the information value for the investors. Now, I want to stress on without eroding the information value for the investors, for the reason that we would not like to take the listed companies, to take the investors for a ride. The listed companies can enjoy these relaxations, not at the cost of the investors, but at the same time trying to facilitate passing on information to the investors. So clearly, when the COVID time started, we didn't want the investors to suffer. So we ensured that the government is actually proclaiming that the capital market is an essential service. And the capital market continued its activity every day from 9:15 to 3:30 without fail on all the working days. It didn't even curtail the timings at all. There was a lot of clamor for actually bringing in some kind of a ban on certain types of trades and all that. But SEBI actually took again a calculated call and ensured that all these transactions did take place without much of a problem, although tweaking here and there about making the entire landscape of the capital market safer and safer for the investors so that defaults don't take place, so that people are able to deposit the margins in time so that basically the trade goes through. That's what SEBI did at the time of these things as far as the overall listed companies trading is concerned. SEBI has always laid a lot of emphasis on the corporate governance, the importance of corporate governance, the importance of the independent directors' play in the board meetings of a listed company, how they are going to play the investor protection role by looking at each and every agenda item and ensuring that actually what is presented to the board and what is presented to the outside world is presented in a fair and a true manner. SEBI has also stressed on the role of the audit committee. The audit committee in the listed company should be playing a stellar role. They should ensure that actually the accounting is done as per the canons of accounting without any misrepresentation of any facts, any figures and all that. At the same time, the SEBI has also been laying a lot of stress on related party transactions, which has been a bane of several listed companies in the recent past, not only in India, even abroad. So the related party transactions, while they're not completely banned at all, they need absolute disclosures and they need the shareholder approval in several cases. And we are also now started laying a lot on ESG governance. That is basically environmental, social, and the governance aspect. So the company should be paying a lot of attention to these kinds of aspects, which will be good for the long-term sustainability of any kind of a company. This is a very small capsule that I wanted to talk on the corporate governance. I will slowly move over to the mutual funds, on which I'll concentrate for the next about 3 to 4 minutes. The mutual fund industry, till very recently, saw an accelerated pace of growth, and the growth was really at a scorching pace that in a matter of just about roughly about 10 years, the industry had grown almost about 10 times, almost about 10 times. It was really a big, fantastic growth on the part of this industry. This was not matched by any other asset class at all. Now, SEBI has been paying a lot of attention to this growth. SEBI has been paying a lot of attention to what the mutual funds present to the investors. SEBI has been paying a lot of attention to the mis-selling that could take place either from the mutual funds or the distributors to the end investor, so that the end investor is not feeling deceived at the end of the day. Now, clearly, SEBI has done a lot as far as the disclosure mechanisms of the mutual fund is concerned. Now, these disclosures have played a very important role in the mutual fund industry, growing from a level of almost about 4 lakh crores, almost about 10 to 12 years back, to a present level of almost about 25 to 26 lakh crores in such a big way, only because maybe a huge amount of disclosures are there as far as the investors are concerned. Now, even when the people invest in mutual funds, my only advice, guidance to the investors is that you are entrusting your money to a fund manager who is going to deploy it in a way that you get a reasonable return. Let not that reasonable return be something like you look for, say, double or triple of bank deposits. That is very unrealistic in today's times. Let us be very clear about it. Even when you get into mutual funds, look for a reasonable rate of return and understand what an equity mutual fund is. Understand what a debt mutual fund is. Understand what a hybrid mutual fund is. Understand the risk behind it. See the disclosures which are coming up. So look at the portfolio composition of these mutual funds and ultimately decide on the basis of what is the total risk that is indicated by the mutual funds before you commit your money in. That is going to be a very, very important piece as far as the investor is concerned. That is not going to be lured by the promised return. Let me tell you, no mutual fund can ever promise a return at all. In fact, there is nothing like a promised return. But then we do get to hear that maybe the ultimate story which reaches the investor is I am going to get about 10% more than the bank deposits. Now, these are definitely not something which the mutual fund investor should be taken in. They should be actually be studying the mutual fund past performance before they decide to commit their money into the mutual fund. This is going to be very, very important. There are new instruments which are coming to the capital markets. They gained a lot of prominence in the recent past, not necessarily only in the post-COVID times, even just prior to that, that is the REITs and InvITs. Now this asset class is going to play a very important role in times to come. This asset class is nothing but monetizing the kind of money which is gone into the real estate, which has gone into infrastructure, which has gone into other big investments. There are investors who would like to participate in these investments, but as an individual investor, they have no way of participating in these investments. So what the SEBI has done is to introduce a new class called REITs and InvITs, where with the limited amount, you can go and participate in these investments as a kind of a part equity holder, part debt holder. It's a kind of a hybrid instrument. It's neither a full-fledged equity nor a full-fledged debt, but you still get to participate and you get return on your investment in the form of yields, in the form of dividends, in the form of returns on a regular basis. So this is something which is catching up slowly but very steadily. And this is an area which we need to look up to in times to come. And this is going to be very helpful in the corporate world in monetizing a huge amount of assets in the form of real estate investments and infrastructure investments and other big investments, where the retail investor can start playing a role with a reasonable kind of a return ensured, with a reasonable amount of return accruing to him. The last module that I would like to stress on is a corporate bond market, on which I would like to talk for about, say, 2 to 3 minutes. Corporate bond market is something where almost about 30 lakh crores of money has been raised by corporates through bonds, through commercial paper, primarily by top-rated corporates. Now, this is one market which has to actually expand in times to come. Why am I using the word has to? I'm using the word has to because traditionally in our economy, the market participants are used to the bank financing the corporates in a big way. The banks are no longer in that position to finance because of a heavy load of non-performing assets as a burden, which is there on their backs. And at the same time, the banks also have a huge asset liability mismatch because they accept short-term deposits, but these fundings like real estate or infrastructure would require a long-term funding. So this is going to be a big problem as far as the banks are concerned. So we need to find a way of funding this kind of an important corporate activity in real estate as well as infrastructure. And this is where the corporate bonds have to play a very important role. So perhaps we need to look for strategies where not just the market is flooded by the AAAs. Today, if the market is flooded by just about 90 to 95% of the market is flooded by AAAs, it's not a very optimal scenario. We need more of maybe the less than AAA rated corporates to enter this market and borrow money. We need to create an ecosystem for this. And if we have to borrow money, there has to be on the equal side investors in these bonds who are able to invest even in these bonds which are less than AAA. Today, there are a lot of investors for AAA bonds. But what we want is, we want a situation where there are sufficient amount of investors even in less than AAA bonds. So this ecosystem can be created only when the domestic institutional investors and perhaps even the retail investors can get into these bonds. The mutual funds can get into these bonds. The insurance companies get into these bonds. Pension funds and banks can get into these bonds and invest so that the bond market improves. It expands, it enlarges. Clearly, if infrastructure funding, if somebody is looking for over a time horizon of almost about 10 to 15 years, I don't think banks are the ideal mechanisms at all. The most ideal mechanisms are the corporate bond market. So we need to develop the market. So you would have seen SEBI chairman saying a few days back that SEBI is looking for ways and means to improve this corporate bond market. SEBI is looking for ways to enter into a dialogue with the other stakeholders in the market to ensure that the market is coming up in a big way, so that banks are no longer doing the heavy lifting and the corporate bond market is going to do the heavy lifting of developing this economy. Now, this is what I wanted to say as far as the corporate bond market is concerned. My time is just getting up, so I am open for some questions. Maybe I wait for some questions to come. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Mahalingam.
Yeah.
Your deliberation was excellent. In fact, it was good that you were introduced in the beginning that you are part of the RBI, because from your deliberation, people can make out that the economist was speaking, a financial institution veteran was speaking, and then at the end, a capital market regulator was speaking. Because why I am using the word regulator? Why first I am saying that you are you spoke as a RBI expert, RBI veteran, because you talked about the macro economy and not only Indian economy, but you talked about the global economy. And it was fantastic to listen to you that today, though we were listening and probably most of us does not know what is contraction, but the COVID taught us the actual meaning of contraction when we started. That because when the COVID started, we were given the indication that GDP may go down to 2% or 1.5%. Then when it came out in May sometime that there is a contraction and Indian GDP may go down up to 9% or 10%. But today, in the, as you said, US economy may shrunk by 32.9%. I mean, it is, nobody can predict, as you say, nobody can predict how much time the COVID may continue. Likewise, how far the economic contraction will be there, nobody can predict. So this was your role that came out as a RBI expert, and then on capital market, you again, as a regulator, you at every point, you caution that whatever you do, you be cautious, be an informed investor. Either investor in whichever form you are there, you be an informed person. So fantastic, sir. And we have got a lot of questions. I don't know how much time you will be having, but I will take up the questions one by one. Wherever
Actually,
you
no, just to say, I have just about 5 minutes because I have another meeting with another. I'm sitting in the office right now, so I'm going to have another meeting starting in another about 5 minutes. So what I will do is I'll be able to take about 2 or 3 questions, but people can send me the questions by email also. I have no problem. I'll see what are the questions that I can answer. I'm prepared to answer, not a problem at all.
So what I'll do, sir, the point which you have covered, those questions I will not put to you because that has already been answered. Like on retail investor, I'm not going to put it because you have already answered those questions in your deliberation. You have covered. So I'll only quickly I put 2 or 3 questions which permitting your time. So the first question I will put before you, that we understand that SEBI is developing mechanism for direct trading access for the investors on the platform of the exchange without any intervention of the brokers. Can you quickly throw some light on that, sir?
No, this is something which is still at the policy level. So I will not be able to reveal everything on this. One thing is there is a lot of thought process which is going on, that whether a direct access could be given, what could be the pluses, what could be the upsides, what could be the downsides, everything will be very carefully weighed. So at this point of time, I may not be in a position to give you much of information on this.
Oh, I'm not the right person. I mean, the way I should have framed my question in such a way that I could have got something from you. Anyway, I will try this from another question. Sir, what is your view on various margins regulations which has been proposed by SEBI to be implemented from in a phased manner in August and in December?
See, clearly we have to look at one thing. While people will think that, okay, this is going to be a big pain as far as the margin is concerned, an upfronting of margin, let us see what has happened in the last about 25, 30 years after the dematting of the scrip was introduced. Slowly and steadily, Reserve Bank, SEBI has been actually sprucing up the risk management systems in the overall system, with the result that today we don't hear of defaults at all. This is something which is really fantastic about the market. So while we may have to undergo certain pain as far as the margining mechanism is concerned, but all that we need to look at is, are we creating a safer market in the longer term? Yes. The clear-cut answer to this question is a very, very clear yes, that we are creating a safer market in the longer term. Does it involve some extra money? Yes, it involves extra cost. No doubt about it at all. But then if a market is going to be safer in the long run, it is going to be sustainable in the long run, I am very sure that, if it involves a little bit of extra cost, that's going to be preferable to a market which is going to be less safer.
Thank you, sir. The last question, because
Yeah.
then I have to offer the vote of thanks also. So I'll not like my time to be curtailed. So the last question is, steps towards stopping cartelization of the stock market. I know SEBI is working wonderfully in regulating what kind of nuisance is there in the market. So, in some, any concrete step where you were able to say that yes, now in the market there is no cartelization.
See, clearly, let me tell you, actually, we have a more sophisticated surveillance mechanism through which we are able to watch each and every trade which is taking place in the market. And we are able to look at the price trends. We are able to look at the trading pattern. We are able to look at who is actually buying, who is actually selling. At the same time, the stock exchanges themselves have an excellent monitoring mechanism where they get into all the trades and see whichever is offering some kind of a suspicion, they get into that. Apart from all this, of course, we do receive complaints. The stock exchanges do get complaints, and we get into these complaints, investigate these complaints. So today, I would be happy to say that the surveillance mechanism is reasonably good enough to ensure that such cartelization is not taking place in a big way at all. Now, there is no cartelization at all and there is no misuse at all. Well, I cannot give that kind of an assurance. But all that I can say is every day SEBI is looking at improving the system. And I can clearly tell you that SEBI's entire supervisory mechanism is oriented towards ensuring that the market abuse is absolutely kept to the bare minimum.
You know, sir, how effective SEBI is, and after the SEBI has come, how the capital market has improvised and gone there. Because I remember distinctly when the first SEBI chairman was appointed, he had said one line that SEBI is a tiger without teeth, which nobody can say, repeat that. Today, SEBI has got not only teeth, it has got jaws also. It has got everything which can catch hold of any defaulter or any mischievous person. So I fully concur with you. Now the time to give vote of thanks. But before that, sir, I'll request you that the Merchant Chamber of Commerce will be compiling the other queries that has come up. We will be forwarding to you. So as per your convenience, you can forward to the Merchant Chamber of Commerce so that we will circulate it to the queries. Those who are, but the benefit will not be given. Everybody will not get the benefit, but at least the queries will get the reply. So, sir, the final part, vote of thanks. Sir, in fact, I feel very enlightened. And here, in the formal vote of thanks, I'm very happy to know that the corporate bond market, which is where you said that the figure of 30 lakh crore, and only AAA rated company has reached. But if that happens, then probably post-COVID era, the effect will be nil. Today, we all agree that COVID has an impact on most of the company, and rating is definitely going to be impacted. So how many handful of companies will remain which are AAA? But you rightly said that it is in the SEBI agenda, in the board agenda, and Chairman has also said how far below AAA rated company can raise the fund from the corporate bond market. And if that can be done, it will be a great service, not to the company, but to the economy and the country as a whole. Because the country needs, the corporate needs support. That's why, so I, on behalf of the Merchant Chamber of Commerce, convey our heartfelt thanks to you. You spared your valuable time. We know how busy all you are, whether it is pandemic or non-pandemic. And you rightly said that financial service provider did not take a single day rest during the pandemic. Also, we also thank our advertiser, Mr. Golden Goenka Group, for their sponsorship. Sir, the lockdown restrictions begin to ease. The strategic focus within the capital market is pivoting towards how to succeed in the post-crisis world. Because every difficulty, every challenge also comes with the opportunity. The road ahead is challenging, but the circumstances also present unique opportunity. That is to accelerate transformation, boost growth, and reassert the value of capital market within society. Today's strategic rethink provides a catalyst for strengthening operational resilience and positioning businesses for a new era of innovation and growth. With this, I again convey the hearty vote of thanks to you and propose a hearty vote of thanks to all of you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.